The feast is loud, wine flows, laughter echoes, and the Alpha Court celebrates another year of dominance. Servants move like shadows between tables heavy with roasted meat and golden bread. No one looks at them. No one ever does. Seren carries a pitcher of honeyed wine through the crowd, head bowed, steps careful. She has done this 1,000 times. She knows how to be invisible. It is the only way to survive in a place where power is everything, and she has none. The doors groan open. Silence falls like a killing frost. An old man enters. His robes are pale as bone, his hair white as winter's sky. His eyes are sealed shut, scarred over, yet he walks without hesitation. Behind him, 2 acolytes in gray guide his path with quiet reverence. Elder Orin, the seer of Ashen Moor. A wolf so ancient some say he walked beside the first alphas when the moon was still young. He has not left his mountain temple in 40 years. The alpha rises from his throne, the court holds its breath. Serene presses herself against the pillar, willing herself smaller, invisible, nothing. But Elder Orin stops. His head turns. Those scarred, sightless eyes fix upon her with terrible precision. Seren's blood freezes. He crosses the hall. The crowd parts. She cannot move, cannot breathe, and cannot understand why the most revered wolf in 3 kingdoms is walking directly toward a servant girl with wine stains on her sleeves. He reaches for her hand. His fingers are cold, paper thin, trembling with age. He lifts her hand to his lips, and he bows, deep, reverent. The bow of a subject to a queen. Behind him, every wolf in the hall drops to their knees, not by choice, by instinct, by something older than thought, deeper than blood. The alpha himself staggers, his body folding against his will. Seren stares at 300 wolves kneeling before her, and she does not understand. Neither do they. Seren had learned many things in her 19 years of service. She had learned that hot soup left scars if a noble was displeased with its temperature. She had learned that broken fingers healed crooked if no one set them properly. She had learned that crying made everything worse, and silence made everything survivable. But she had never learned why an ancient elder would bow to her. The hall remained frozen. 300 wolves on their knees, faces caught between shock and something that looked almost like fear. The wine pitcher slipped from Seren's fingers and shattered against the stone floor. Red liquid spread like blood across pale marble. She should clean it. That was her first thought. She should apologize, drop to her own knees, and beg forgiveness for the mess and the disruption and whatever offense she had somehow caused, simply by existing in the wrong place at the wrong moment. But Elder Orin still held her hand. "Child?" His voice was soft as ash, rough as ancient bark. "I have waited so long. I don't—" The words caught in Serene's throat. "I don't understand." "No." Something like sorrow crossed his weathered face. "No, you wouldn't." They made certain of that. The hall stirred. Wolves began to rise, confusion rippling through them like wind through tall grass. Seren saw their expressions shifting, shock giving way to suspicion, suspicion giving way to something harder. A servant girl had just received a bow that should have been reserved for royalty. Someone would have to answer for that. Elder Orin. The voice cut through the murmurs like a blade through silk. Alpha Torvin descended from the raised platform where his throne sat. He moved like all alphas moved, with the casual certainty of absolute power. Dark hair fell across his forehead. His jaw was sharp, his shoulders broad, and his eyes, gray as storm clouds, cold as northern ice, fixed upon Seren with an intensity that made her want to disappear into the stone itself. "Explain," he commanded. It was not a request. Elder Orin released Seren's hand slowly. He turned toward the Alpha, and though his eyes were sealed shut, Seren had the uncomfortable feeling that he saw far more than anyone else in this room. "I have given greeting to one who deserves it." the elder said simply. A servant? Alpha Torvin's voice carried disbelief sharp enough to wound. You bowed to a kitchen servant? I bowed to her blood, her soul, the mark she carries. She carries nothing but wine stains and the stench of the scullery. Heat flooded Siren's cheeks. She wanted to shrink, to run, to somehow undo the last 3 minutes and return to the comfortable invisibility that had kept her alive this long. You see with young eyes, Elder Oren replied, unmoved by the Alpha's contempt. I see with something older. A muscle flexed in Torvin's cheek. His gaze moved from the elder to Siren, and she felt it like a physical weight, pressing down on her shoulders, demanding answers she did not have. Who are your parents, girl? The question hit harder than it should have. Siren swallowed. I don't know, Alpha. You don't know, or you won't say. I was left at the gates as an infant. Her voice came out smaller than she wanted. The steward placed me in the kitchens. I've been there ever since. Convenient. His tone suggested he did not believe her. It's the truth. Something flickered in his expression. Not belief? Not yet. But something that might have been curiosity. He studied her like she was a puzzle he hadn't expected to find, a disruption in an otherwise ordered world. Take her to the Eastern Tower, he said finally, addressing his guards. She will remain there until I have answers. Siren's heart seized. The Eastern Tower was where they kept prisoners, traitors, wolves awaiting execution. Alpha, I haven't done anything. Silence. The word was quiet, but it carried the weight of absolute authority. You will speak when I ask you to speak. 2 guards stepped forward. Large hands closed around Siren's arms. She did not struggle. Struggling only made things worse. She had learned that lesson long ago, written into her skin in scars she never spoke about. But as they pulled her toward the doors, Elder Oren's voice rose one final time. Be careful, young Alpha. There was warning in his tone, ancient and heavy. The moon sees what you do to her children, and the moon has a long memory. Torvin said nothing. The doors closed behind Siren, and the last thing she saw was 300 wolves still staring at her like she was something impossible, something terrifying, something they didn't understand any more than she did. Torvin had ruled the Northern Pack for 7 years. He had crushed rebellions, negotiated impossible treaties, and executed his own uncle when the man attempted a coup. He had done what was necessary, always, without hesitation, without sentiment. He did not hesitate. He did not get confused. And yet he stood in the center of his own great hall, surrounded by the most powerful wolves in 3 kingdoms, and he had no explanation for what had just happened. His body had bowed without his permission. That was the part he couldn't dismiss. The elder kneeling. That was strange, perhaps even senile. But Torvin himself dropping to his knee, his wolf recognizing something in that servant girl's presence and submitting before his mind could even object? That was not supposed to be possible. The court awaits your direction, Alpha. Vashara's voice came from his left, smooth, measured, utterly controlled. Torvin turned to face his regent. Vashara had served his father before him and his grandfather before that. She was old in the way the mountains were old, beautiful in the way winter was beautiful. Cold, remote, untouchable. Her silver hair was coiled at the base of her neck. Her violet eyes revealed nothing. Clear the hall, Torvin ordered. The feast is concluded. Murmurs erupted. Protests formed on noble lips but died before they could be spoken. No one argued with the Alpha, not openly. Not when his wolf was this close to the surface, his control this visibly frayed. The court dispersed in clusters, whispers trailing behind them like smoke. Torvin knew what they were saying. He knew the questions already forming, the doubts beginning to seed. An Alpha who bowed to a servant was an Alpha who could be questioned. He could not allow that. When the hall was empty, save for Vishara and his two personal guards, Torvin turned to her fully. What do you know of the girl? Very little. Vishara's expression remained placid. She was left at the gates 19 years ago, an orphan. The previous steward assigned her to the kitchens. She has remained there, unremarkable in every way. Unremarkable. Torvin tasted the word and found it bitter. Then explain why my body knelt to her. A pause, brief, almost imperceptible, but Torvin had spent a lifetime reading silences. Elder Orin is ancient, Vishara said. His mind may not be what it once was. As for your reaction, Alpha, the Elder's power is considerable. It's possible his own reverence triggered an instinctive response in those nearby. It was a reasonable explanation, neat, logical. It should have satisfied him. It didn't. I want her history traced, Torvin said. Every detail. Who left her at the gates? What she's done since? Who she's spoken to? Of course, Alpha. Vishara inclined her head. I will oversee it personally. No. The word came sharper than he intended. He wasn't sure why he said it, only that something in his gut, some instinct he couldn't name, rejected the idea of Vishara alone with this particular puzzle. Assign it to Brennick. I want daily reports. Something flickered across Vishara's face, too fast to identify. But Torvin filed it away, another piece in a growing collection of things that didn't quite fit. As you wish, Alpha. She withdrew with a graceful bow. Torvin remained in the empty hall, staring at the spot where the servant girl had stood. Seren. He hadn't known her name until tonight. Hadn't even known she existed. And yet the moment Elder Orin had touched her hand, something in Torvin had recognized her. Not her face, not her scent. Something deeper. His wolf stirred beneath his skin, restless in a way it hadn't been in years. It wanted something, wanted to go to her, to see her, to understand what it had felt in that single impossible moment of connection. He crushed the impulse ruthlessly. She was a servant, a disruption, a problem to be solved. That was all. He climbed the stairs to the eastern tower himself, telling no one. The guards at the door straightened when they saw him, surprise flashing across their faces before training smoothed it away. Open it. The door swung inward. The room was sparse. A narrow bed, a single window barred with iron, a wooden chair. Moonlight fell through the bars in silver stripes, illuminating the girl who sat on the bed with her knees drawn to her chest. She looked up when he entered. Torvin had expected fear. Tears, perhaps. Pleading, certainly. That was what prisoners did when the Alpha visited their cells in the dead of night. But Seren only looked at him with those strange amber eyes, eyes he was now realizing were not the brown he had assumed in the torchlight of the hall, and said nothing. She simply waited. You will tell me the truth, Torvin said, closing the door behind him. And I will know if you lie. I've told you everything I know. Then you will tell me again, from the beginning. She took a breath, let it out slowly. In the moonlight she looked fragile, breakable. But there was something in the set of her jaw, the stillness of her hands that suggested otherwise. I was found at the gates, she said, wrapped in a gray blanket. No note, no name. The steward's wife nursed me until I was old enough to work. I've been in the kitchens ever since. I scrub pots. I carry wine. I stay out of the way. And your parents? Dead, I assume. No emotion in the words. Just fact. Or they wouldn't have left me. Torvin watched her carefully. His wolf pressed against his chest, inexplicably agitated. Elder Orin spoke of a mark. What mark do you carry? Confusion crossed her features, genuine as far as he could tell. I don't know what he meant. Strip. Her eyes widened. For the first time, real fear flickered there. Alpha. I want to see your skin. If there's a mark, I will find it. There's nothing. That wasn't a request. Silence stretched between them. Seren's hands trembled slightly, but she didn't move. No. The word hung in the air, small but immovable. Torvin stared at her. In 7 years, no one had ever refused him, defied him, looked him in the eye, and simply said no. His wolf surged forward, not with anger, but with something far more dangerous: interest. You refuse your alpha? I refuse to be stripped like livestock for inspection. Her voice shook, but she met his gaze steadily. If you want to kill me for that, you'll have to kill me, but I won't do that. Something shifted in Torvin's chest, a small fissure in walls he had built very carefully over many years. He should punish her. He should make an example of her. That was what alphas did when their authority was challenged. Instead, he turned and walked to the door. You'll remain here until I decide what to do with you. He didn't look back. He couldn't. Because if he looked back, he might see whatever it was that had made him kneel, and he wasn't ready for that. He wasn't ready for any of this. 3 days passed. 3 days of silence, thin soup, and the endless view of mountains through iron bars. Seren did not sleep well. Every footstep in the corridor made her heart seize, certain that this was the moment the Alpha would return, certain that her single act of defiance had sealed her fate. But he didn't return. On the morning of the 4th day, a guard opened her door and told her she was being reassigned. Where? Seren asked, not daring to hope. The main household. You're to serve at the Alpha's table. She stared at him, waiting for the cruelty underneath. The catch. The punishment disguised as mercy. The guard only shrugged. Alpha's orders. Seren followed him through corridors she had never walked before. The eastern tower gave way to the central keep, and the central keep to the residential wing where only nobles and high servants were permitted. The floors changed from bare stone to polished wood. The walls bore tapestries depicting hunts and battles and moons in every phase. She didn't belong here. But here was where they put her. Her new quarters were small, but warm. A real bed with actual blankets. A window that wasn't barred. A basin for washing and a simple dress laid across the chair, nicer than anything she had ever worn. She didn't trust any of it. That night she served at the Alpha's private dinner, a smaller gathering, perhaps 20 wolves, nobles and advisors and generals. Seren kept her head down, moved quickly, and did not meet anyone's eyes. But she watched. She watched the Alpha at the head of the table, speaking little, eating less. She watched Vishara at his right hand, tracking every movement in the room. She watched a young wolf named Brennick, warm smile, kind eyes, who seemed to be the only person at the table capable of making the Alpha almost smile. And she watched the door to the side chamber, where 2 guards stood stiffly outside. Something was happening in there. Something the nobles pretended not to notice. After the meal, Seren was collecting empty platters when she heard it. A sound that made her stomach drop. A child crying. Not loud. Not dramatic. The kind of crying that had been muffled, swallowed, held inside until it simply couldn't be contained anymore. Seren knew that sound. She knew it in her bones. She set down the platters and moved toward the side door before she could think better of it. Halt! One of the guards stepped into her path. This area is restricted. There's a child in there. That's not your concern. They're crying. Go back to your duties, servant. Something hot flared in Seren's chest. She had spent 19 years being silent, being small, being nothing. And it had kept her alive, yes, but it had never kept anyone else alive. It had never helped anyone but herself. Let me pass. The guard laughed. You think you have authority here, girl? You're nothing. You're less than nothing. The only reason you're not dead in a ditch is because the Alpha finds you amusing. Seren's hands curled into fists at her sides. She thought about the elder's bow. About the way 300 wolves had knelt without understanding why. About the alpha's eyes in her prison cell, watching her like she was something he couldn't quite solve. She didn't know what any of it meant, but she knew what a crying child sounded like. Let me pass. The guard reached for her arm. Seren stepped back, but his grip closed around her wrist, bruising tight. You need to learn your place, girl. Release her. The voice came from behind them, low, commanding, cutting through the air like a blade. Alpha Torvin stood at the end of the corridor. His face was unreadable, but his eyes were fixed on the guard's hand around Seren's wrist. Alpha? The guard released her immediately. She was trying to access the restricted chamber. I saw what you were doing. The guard went pale. Torvin walked closer, each step deliberate, measured, the kind of walk that preceded violence, though his voice remained perfectly calm. The servants of my household are not to be handled roughly. He stopped directly in front of the guard. Is that understood? Yes, Alpha. Good. He turned to Seren. Why were you trying to enter that room? There's a child crying in there. Something flickered across his face. And I wanted to help. It's not your place to help. Then whose place is it? The question hung between them, heavy and sharp. Seren saw his expression tighten, saw the flash of something, not anger, but something more complex, move through his features. Come with me, he said finally. He walked to the side door and pushed it open. Seren followed, ignoring the stunned look on the guards' faces. The room beyond was small and cold. No fire in the hearth. No light except what spilled in from the corridor. And in the corner, huddled on a thin pallet, sat a boy. He was perhaps 7 years old. Thin arms, hollow cheeks, and eyes that had seen too much too young. When he saw the Alpha, he scrambled backward until his back hit the wall. Seren's heart cracked clean down the center. Who is he? She asked quietly. The son of a traitor. Torvin's voice was flat. His father attempted to assassinate me last month. He's being held until we determine if he was complicit. He's a child. Children can be weapons. Seren turned to look at the Alpha fully. In this light, with this broken boy cowering behind her, she found she was no longer afraid of him. Children are children, she said, and this one has been left alone in a cold room for weeks. He's terrified. He's probably starving. Whatever his father did, this boy didn't do it. You don't know that. I know what I see. She crossed to the boy and knelt in front of him, slowly, carefully, the way you approached a wounded animal that might bite. Hello, she said softly. I'm Seren. What's your name? The boy stared at her with wide, wet eyes. Kieran. Kieran, that's a good name. She smiled, small and warm. Are you hungry, Kieran? A tiny nod. Seren looked back at the Alpha. He needs food, blankets, a fire. He's a prisoner. He's 7 years old. Silence stretched between them. The boy's quiet sniffles filled the space. Torvin exhaled slowly, his hands flexed at his sides. Brennick. The warm-eyed wolf appeared in the doorway instantly. Alpha? See that the boy is moved to heated quarters. Food, blankets, whatever he needs. A pause. And have someone check on him. Regularly. Brennick's eyebrows rose, but he nodded without question. Yes, Alpha. As the guards moved to carefully lift the boy, Seren rose. She found the Alpha watching her with that same unreadable expression, half confusion, half something else. Why do you care? He asked. He's nothing to you. Everyone is something, Seren replied. Even people who've been told their whole lives that they're nothing. She saw the words land, saw them hit somewhere deeper than she'd intended. Torvin said nothing, but as she walked past him toward the door, she could feel his gaze following her like heat against her back. and in the shadows at the far end of the corridor, Vishara watched them both. Her violet eyes held no warmth, only calculation. 2 weeks had passed since the night Torvin moved a trader's son to heated quarters because a servant girl looked at him like he was failing some test he hadn't known he was taking. 2 weeks. And he still couldn't stop thinking about it. About her. He stood at the window of his study, watching the courtyard below. Seren was there, as she often was now, sitting on a stone bench with Kieran beside her. The boy had transformed in 14 days, no longer hollow-eyed and flinching. He laughed now, actually laughed, at something Seren was saying, his small face animated in a way that made Torvin's chest feel strangely tight. She had that effect on people. He was beginning to understand that now. The door opened behind him. He didn't turn. "You summoned me, Alpha?" Seren's voice, careful, neutral, giving nothing away. She had learned to navigate his court with remarkable speed, reading the currents of power and adjusting her steps accordingly. But she never cowered, never simpered. She simply observed, waited, responded with that quiet, immovable dignity that made his wolf pace restlessly beneath his skin. "Close the door." He heard her comply, heard her footsteps cross the stone floor and stop at a respectful distance. Finally, he turned. She stood with her hands clasped in front of her, wearing the simple gray dress of an upper servant. Her dark hair was braided back from her face, and those amber eyes watched him with patient attention. "Brennick has completed his investigation into your origins," Torvin said. Something flickered across her features. Hope, perhaps. Or fear. Maybe both. And? Nothing. He moved to his desk, picked up the report, set it down again. "No one remembers who left you at the gates. No one recalls any pregnant women in the area who might have abandoned a child. The blanket you were wrapped in was common wool, sold in a dozen markets. There is no trail. No answers. Nothing." Seren was quiet for a long moment. "I see. Does that disappoint you?" "I've spent 19 years not knowing who I am." Her voice was steady, but he caught the slight tension in her shoulders. "Another day of not knowing is not surprising." Torvin studied her. In the slanting afternoon light she looked younger than her years, fragile in a way he knew was deceiving. "Elder Oren has requested an audience with you." Her eyes widened slightly. "With me?" "He returned to his mountain temple after the feast, but has sent word that he can explain what he sensed in you. What made him bow?" Torvin paused. "I've denied the request." "Why?" The question was sharp. Sharper than a servant should dare. "Because I don't trust the timing," Torvin said flatly. "His arrival at my feast was not coincidence. He hasn't left his mountain in 40 years, and suddenly he appears on the exact night you're serving wine in my hall. Someone sent for him. Someone wanted that spectacle to occur." "Who would want that?" "That's what I'm trying to determine." Seren's brow furrowed. "You think someone is using me? For some purpose?" "I think someone knows exactly who you are and has been waiting for the right moment to reveal it." He moved closer, watching her reaction carefully. "The question is whether you're a weapon pointed at me, or something else entirely." "I'm not a weapon." "Everyone is a weapon in the right hands." She held his gaze without flinching. "Then perhaps you should determine whose hands I'm in before you decide what to do with me." The words landed somewhere unexpected. Torvin felt his wolf stir, pressing against his ribs with an urgency he didn't understand. "You speak boldly for someone whose life depends on my goodwill." "My life has always depended on someone's goodwill." A small, bitter smile crossed her lips. "Yours is simply the latest." He should have been offended. Should have reminded her of her place, of the vast chasm between an alpha and a kitchen servant elevated above her station. Instead, he found himself asking, "What was it like? Growing up in my kitchens?" The question clearly surprised her. Her composure cracked, just slightly, revealing something raw underneath. Cold, she said after a moment. Busy. I was useful, so I was fed. I was quiet, so I was mostly left alone. There were worse fates. And better ones. I wouldn't know. I've never had one. The simplicity of it struck him harder than any accusation could have. She wasn't asking for pity. She was simply stating facts. This was her life. This had always been her life. And until 2 weeks ago, no one, including him, had ever thought to question whether she deserved something different. Kieran speaks of you constantly, Torvin said, not entirely sure why he was sharing this. He says you tell him stories at night, about wolves who become stars, and moons who fall in love with the sea. Seren's expression softened. He has trouble sleeping. The stories help. Where did you learn them? I made them up. A small shrug. The kitchen was lonely. Stories kept me company. Something shifted in Torvin's chest. He thought of himself at 7, surrounded by tutors and trainers and his mother's cold expectations, and he wondered if he had ever had someone who told him stories simply to help him sleep. He couldn't remember. You may see Elder Oren, he said abruptly. Seren blinked. I thought you said, I'll be present for the meeting. Whatever he tells you, I will hear as well. He studied her face intently. If someone is using you as a piece in a game I don't understand, I intend to learn the rules before they make their next move. And if he tells you something you don't want to hear? The question hung between them, heavy with implication. Then I'll deal with it, Torvin said quietly. As I deal with everything. He expected her to nod, to accept, and to withdraw with proper deference. Instead, she stepped closer. Close enough that he could smell lavender and something warmer underneath. Something that made his wolf freeze mid-pace, utterly focused. You're not what I expected, she said softly. When I was in the kitchens, I heard stories about you. The cold alpha, the ruthless king, the wolf who showed no mercy. Those stories are true. Maybe. Her amber eyes searched his face. But they're not complete. She turned and walked to the door, paused with her hand on the handle. Thank you, she said without looking back. For Kieran. For the room. For... She trailed off. Just thank you. She left before he could respond. Torvin stood in his empty study, heart pounding against his ribs, his wolf howling somewhere deep inside him. He was in trouble. He knew it with absolute certainty. And somewhere in this castle, someone else knew exactly who Seren was and what she could become. He intended to find them first. A month slipped past like water through cupped hands. Seren's world had transformed so completely she sometimes caught herself waiting for it to shatter. She had quarters with a real door that locked. She ate meals with substance. She had duties that didn't leave her hands cracked and bleeding. And she had Kieran. The boy had attached himself to her with the desperate intensity of a child who had lost everything and found one person willing to stay. He followed her through the halls, sat beside her at meals, curled against her side when nightmares woke him screaming in the dark. Seren understood. She understood in a way that required no explanation. They were both orphans, both discarded, both invisible until someone had finally, improbably, chosen to see them. The Elder's audience had been delayed, first by a border dispute that required the Alpha's attention, then by a visiting delegation from the Eastern Pack. Seren had learned to stop expecting answers. Answers, in her experience, rarely came when you needed them. Instead, she focused on what was in front of her. Kieran's slow healing. The strange, charged moments when she and the Alpha crossed paths in corridors or courtyard. The way his eyes would find hers across crowded rooms, holding for just a heartbeat longer than necessary. She didn't know what was happening between them. She wasn't sure she wanted to know. Tonight was the winter solstice celebration. The great hall blazed with firelight, packed with wolves from across the territory who had gathered to honor the longest night. Seren stood near the wall, technically on duty but mostly forgotten in the press of bodies and noise. She watched the Alpha move through the crowd. He wore formal black, the silver circlet of his rank glinting in the firelight. Nobles approached him constantly, seeking favor, seeking attention, seeking whatever scraps of power proximity might provide. He handled each interaction with practiced ease, but Seren could see the tension in his shoulders, the tightness around his eyes. He was exhausted. She wondered if anyone else noticed. "Beautiful, isn't he?" The voice came from beside her, smooth, cold, instantly recognizable. Seren turned to find Vishara standing at her shoulder, violet eyes fixed on the Alpha across the room. "My Lady Regent, don't." Vishara's lips curved, but the smile didn't reach her eyes. "We're quite past formalities, you and I. After all, you've managed something remarkable. From kitchen rat to the Alpha's curiosity." The words were designed to wound. Seren let them slide past. "I'm simply a servant, my lady, as I've always been." Vishara took a sip from her wine goblet. "And yet he watches you like you're something precious, something he's afraid to lose." A pause. "It makes one wonder what you've done to earn such regard." "I've done nothing." "Oh, that I believe." Vishara turned to face her fully. "You're not clever enough to have orchestrated any of this. You're merely a pawn, moved by hands you don't understand." "Whose hands?" "Now that," Vishara said softly, "is the question, isn't it?" She walked away before Seren could respond, gliding through the crowd like a blade through silk. Seren's heart beat too fast. She didn't understand the threat she had just received, but she recognized the shape of it, the promise of violence wrapped in silk and courtesy. A commotion near the main doors pulled her attention. The Alpha had stopped mid-conversation, his head turned sharply toward the entrance. Around him, other wolves were reacting too, stiffening, scenting the air, responding to something Seren's human dull senses couldn't detect. Then she saw him. A wolf in torn traveling clothes staggered through the doors. Blood streaked his face. His arm hung at an angle that made Seren's stomach turn. "Alpha!" His voice cracked across the hall. "Ambush, the southern border. They're coming." He collapsed. The hall erupted into chaos. Torvin was moving before the messenger hit the ground, barking orders that sent wolves scrambling in every direction. Guards formed up. Generals gathered. Within minutes, the celebration had transformed into a war council. Seren pressed herself against the wall, trying to stay out of the way. She spotted Kieran near the back of the hall, his small face pale with remembered terror. She started toward him. A hand closed around her arm. She turned, expecting Vishara, expecting guards, expecting anything but what she found. The Alpha stood before her, his eyes wild in a way she had never seen. His breathing was wrong, too fast, too shallow. Sweat beaded at his temples despite the winter chill. "Alpha?" She kept her voice low. "What's happening?" "I need—" He stopped, swallowed. His body trembled like he was fighting something internal, something clawing to get out. "I need you to take Kieran to his room, lock the door. Don't open it for anyone until I come for you." "Torvin." His name slipped out without permission. She saw his eyes widen at the familiarity, but she didn't take it back. "What's wrong with you?" "Nothing, I'm—" His hand spasmed where it gripped her arm. A tremor ran through his entire body. "Please, just take the boy and go. Now." Something was very wrong. Something beyond the border attack. Beyond the chaos surrounding them. But she could see he was holding himself together by threads. Could see the desperation beneath the command. "All right?" She covered his hand with hers, just for a moment. "I'll go." Relief flooded his features. He released her, turned away, and she watched him stride toward his generals with perfect composure that she now knew was pure performance. She gathered Kieran and moved quickly through the back corridors. The boy was trembling, memories of his father's violence clearly surfacing, and Seren held his hand tightly as they climbed the stairs to his quarters. She had just locked the door behind them when she heard it. A howl. Not the rallying call of wolves preparing for battle. Something else. Something ragged and wrong and full of pain. Kieran pressed against her side. What was that? Seren didn't answer. She couldn't, because she recognized the quality of that sound. It was the Alpha, and he was losing control. Seren stayed with Kieran until his trembling stopped, until his eyes grew heavy, until his small body relaxed into exhausted sleep. Then she did something foolish. She left. The corridors were empty. Everyone had either gone to the border or locked themselves in their quarters. Seren moved through the silence, following some instinct she couldn't name, searching for the source of that howl. She found him in the western wing, a chamber she had never entered, its doors hanging open, claw marks gouged into the wood. Inside, devastation. Furniture overturned, tapestries torn, a mirror shattered into 1,000 glittering shards across the floor. And in the center of it all, the Alpha. He was on his knees, still in human form but barely. His body shook with violent tremors. His hands, she could see them even from the doorway, were elongating, claws emerging and retracting, his wolf trying to tear free from his skin. Torvin! His head snapped toward her. His eyes were wrong, too dark, barely human. Get out. The words came through gritted teeth, distorted by the transformation fighting to claim him. I can't control. I'm not leaving. She crossed the threshold. Glass crunched beneath her shoes. Seren. Her name was a growl, a warning, a plea. I'll hurt you. I don't want to. But I will. I can't stop it. Then don't stop it. He stared at her, confusion cutting through the wildness in his eyes. She knelt in front of him, close enough to touch, close enough to be killed if his wolf took over completely. Whatever is happening to you, she said softly, you don't have to fight it alone. You don't understand. His voice broke. It's always been like this. Since I was a child. The violence inside me, the need to destroy. My mother said, she said it was my nature, that I had to learn to channel it, control it, use it for conquest or it would consume me. Your mother was wrong. You don't know that. I know that children don't come into the world broken. Seren reached out slowly, giving him time to pull away. He didn't. Her hand came to rest against his cheek. His skin burned with fever heat. I know that whatever is happening to you right now feels like drowning. And I know that drowning people need someone to hold on to. His eyes closed. A shudder ran through him, but the tremors were slowing, the claws receding. Why aren't you afraid of me? I am, she admitted. But I'm more afraid of leaving you alone. His hand came up to cover hers where it rested against his face. Large, scarred, still trembling slightly, but human now. Fully human. You should run, he whispered. From this castle, from this pack, from me. You should run and never look back. Should I? His eyes opened, gray and clear and devastated. There are things you don't know, Seren. Things about who you are, about what was done to keep you hidden. Her heart stopped. What do you mean? Elder Oren sent a message before the border attack. It arrived this morning. He swallowed. I wasn't going to tell you. I was trying to protect you from... Tell me now. The words came out harder than she intended. She saw him flinch, saw the guilt that flooded his features, and she almost softened. Almost. The mark he sensed on you, Torvin said quietly. It's not a physical mark. It's a bloodline, a lineage that was supposed to have been exterminated nearly 20 years ago. The room tilted slightly. I don't understand. Before my father took the throne, there was another ruling family. The Valdres line? They had ruled these lands for 300 years. They were... He stopped. Started again. They were different from us. Older blood. Stronger wolves. It was said their line carried the blessing of the moon itself. What happened to them? His face hardened with old shame. My father happened. With the help of his allies, he orchestrated a coup. The Valdres Alpha and his Luna were killed. Their child, a daughter, barely a few months old, was supposed to die with them. The floor dropped out from beneath Seren's feet. Supposed to. She repeated numbly. Someone took her, hid her, left her at the gates of the very castle her parents had once ruled. His gaze bore into hers with terrible intensity. Wrapped in a gray blanket. No name, no note. Just a baby with amber eyes that no wolf had seen since the last Valdres heir. Seren's hand dropped from his face. She stood, stumbled back, and caught herself against the overturned desk. No. Elder Oren confirmed it. The moment he touched your hand, he knew. The Valdres bloodline carries a specific spiritual signature, unmistakable to anyone with the sight. Torvin rose slowly, watching her like she might shatter. You're the lost Princess Seren, the rightful alpha of these lands. And my family, we're the ones who murdered yours. The words hit her like physical blows, each one a wound she couldn't defend against. She thought of 19 years in the kitchens, 19 years of scrubbing floors in a castle that should have been her home, 19 years of being invisible, worthless, nothing, while the family who had slaughtered her parents walked the halls above her head. Who else knows? Her voice didn't sound like her own. Too cold, too empty. Elder Oren, myself, and... Torvin's expression darkened. Whoever has been hiding you all these years, whoever knew the truth and kept you in servitude instead of revealing your identity. Someone who had access to a newborn princess. Someone who had influence over where abandoned children were placed. Someone who had spent nearly 20 years ensuring Seren remained invisible. The realization crashed over her with sickening clarity. Vashara. Torvin went still. What? Tonight. At the feast. She spoke to me. Seren's mind raced, pieces clicking into place with horrible precision. She called me a pawn, said I was being moved by hands I didn't understand. Her voice cracked. She's known. This whole time. She's known who I am, and she's been using the knowledge to control the situation. Torvin finished, his voice deadly quiet, keeping you hidden until she needed you. And now that you've been revealed, the border attack. Seren breathed. It's not about territory. It's about distraction. Getting you away from the castle so she can... The door burst open behind them. Guards poured in. Vashara behind them, her violet eyes blazing with cold fury. Seize her, she commanded, pointing at Seren. The servant girl has attacked the Alpha. She must be contained immediately. That's not true. Torvin stepped forward, placing himself between Seren and the guards. Stand down. All of you. My Alpha. Vashara's voice dripped with false concern. You've had one of your episodes. You're not thinking clearly. This girl has obviously manipulated you. I said stand down. His voice carried the weight of absolute authority. The guards hesitated, caught between two powers. In that moment of uncertainty, Vashara moved. Seren never saw the blade, only felt the sharp sting as it sliced across her palm, and then the strange foreign sensation of something being pressed into the wound. Mountain ash and wolfsbane, Vashara whispered in her ear. Even Valdres blood can't survive that. Seren's legs buckled. The last thing she saw before the darkness took her was Torvin's face, his expression of pure, devastating horror as he caught her falling body, and Vashara, smiling. Time fractured into heartbeats. Torvin caught Seren as she fell, her body going limp in his arms, her amber eyes rolling back. Blood dripped from her palm where Vashara had cut her, mixing with something darker, something that smelled of death. "What have you done?" His voice didn't sound like his own. It came from somewhere deep and feral, somewhere his wolf lived and raged and wanted to tear the world apart. Vashara stepped back, the bloody blade still in her hand. Her composure remained perfect. Nearly 20 years of deception, and she hadn't even broken a sweat. "What should have been done 2 decades ago?" she replied calmly. "Finishing what your father started." The guards stood frozen, caught between loyalty and horror. Torvin saw their faces, the confusion, the dawning understanding, the fear. "She's the Valdris heir," one of them whispered. "She's a threat to everything we've built," Vashara snapped. "Her bloodline carries a claim to this throne that predates your alphas by 300 years. If she lives, if the other packs learn what she is, there will be war." "So you poisoned her." Torvin's arms tightened around Serene's unconscious form. "You poisoned an innocent woman to protect your power." "To protect your power." Vashara's violet eyes flashed. "Everything I have done, every manipulation, every secret, and every carefully maintained lie has been to secure your throne. Your father understood this. He knew that some bloodlines are too dangerous to let survive." "My father was a murderer." "Your father was a king." Torvin looked down at Seren's face. Pale now, her breathing shallow, the poison working through her veins with terrible efficiency. "How long does she have?" Vashara tilted her head, considering. "An hour? Perhaps less." "The antidote?" "There isn't one. Not for this combination. Not at this dosage." Something splintered inside Torvin, something that had been straining for weeks, held together by duty and discipline and the iron will his mother had beaten into him since childhood. It shattered completely. His wolf surged forward, not the violent, uncontrolled eruption he had experienced before, but something else. Something older and calmer and infinitely more dangerous. "You will tell me how to save her," he said, and his voice carried harmonics that made the stone walls vibrate. "Or I will tear the knowledge from your mind piece by piece." Fear flickered across Vashara's face. "You wouldn't. I raised you. You taught me to be a weapon." Torvin rose, still holding Seren against his chest. "You and my mother, you both wanted the same thing. A king who would conquer, who would destroy, who would never question the blood on his hands. And look what you've become. I've become a monster." The word came out quiet, devastated. "I've spent my entire life believing there was something broken inside me, something violent that had to be channeled into war, or it would consume me. But it was never real, was it? The episodes, the loss of control." He saw it in her eyes, the confirmation he hadn't wanted. "You've been poisoning me too." Vashara's silence was answer enough. "Since I was a child." His voice cracked. "Every violent outburst, every time I lost myself, it was you. Keeping me unstable, keeping me dependent on conquest as an outlet, keeping me too broken to ever question what you'd done to take this throne." "The Valdris were weak," Vashara spat. "They believed in mercy, in peace. They would have destroyed everything. They would have been better than us." The words hung in the air, heavy as a death sentence. Torvin turned to his guards. "Take her. The deep cells. If she speaks to anyone, if she attempts to give any orders, you have my permission to silence her permanently." The guards moved. Vashara struggled, but she was old, and they outnumbered her completely. "You'll regret this," she screamed as they dragged her toward the door. "Without me, you're nothing." The door slammed shut behind her. Silence fell. Torvin looked down at Seren. Her breathing had grown even shallower. Her lips were turning blue. "Alpha." Brennick appeared in the doorway, face pale. "I heard... Is it true?" Find Elder Orin. Torvin's voice came out raw. I don't care if you have to carry him down the mountain yourself. Find him and bring him here. Now. Brennick ran. Torvin carried Saren to his own chambers, laid her on his own bed, sat beside her, and held her cold hand and watched her slip further away with every passing moment. Stay, he whispered. Please. I know you have no reason to fight for this life. I know we've given you nothing but suffering and lies. But there's a boy in this castle who needs you, who loves you, and there's... His voice broke. There's me. And I know that's not enough. I know I'm the last person who deserves to ask anything of you, but I am asking, I am begging. Please, Seren, stay. Her chest rose, fell, rose again. He pressed his forehead to her hand and prayed to a moon he had never believed in. And somewhere in the darkness, something answered. Seren dreamed of wolves. Hundreds of them, silver and white and gray, running through a forest that existed only in moonlight. They moved like water, like wind, like something too beautiful to be real. And at the center of them, two figures waited for her. A man with her amber eyes, a woman with her dark hair. They stood together in a clearing filled with starlight, and when they saw her, they smiled. Our daughter, the woman said, and her voice sounded like coming home. Seren tried to reach them, tried to run, but her legs wouldn't move, and the distance between them seemed to stretch forever. Not yet, her father said gently. It's not your time yet, little one. But I want to stay with you. We know. Her mother's eyes glistened. But there are people who need you. A boy who is waiting, a man who is learning, a kingdom that has forgotten what mercy looks like. I don't know how to be what they need. You already are? Her father stepped closer, somehow crossing the impossible distance, and pressed his palm against her heart. You carry our blood, Seren. But more than that, you carry our hope. The hope that one day our people would know peace again. What if I fail? Then you fail. Her mother's smile was sad and proud and full of love. But you will have tried, and trying is all anyone can ever do. The wolves began to fade. The clearing dimmed. Her parents' faces blurred at the edges. Wait. We love you, they said together. We have always loved you. We will always love you. Now wake up, daughter. Wake up and live. Seren's eyes opened to candlelight and the smell of herbs and a face hovering above hers. Elder Orin. His scarred, sightless eyes seemed to see her anyway. His ancient hands rested on her forehead, warm despite his age. There you are, he murmured. Welcome back, child. She tried to speak, coughed instead. Her throat felt like broken glass. Easy. Another voice. Rough, exhausted, breaking with relief. You're safe. Torvin sat beside the bed, his face haggard, dark circles under his eyes. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. How long? Seren managed. 3 days. His hand found hers, squeezed gently. Elder Orin arrived just in time. He used the old healing rites, the ones only the Valdris bloodline can receive. The moon's blessing in your veins fought the poison while he worked. He swallowed. Another hour, and even that wouldn't have been enough. But you're here. You're alive. Vashara? In custody. She'll face trial before the full court. Everything will be exposed. He paused. The border attack was a diversion, as you suspected. A handful of mercenaries paid to create chaos. Brennick's scouts intercepted them before any real damage was done. Seren closed her eyes. 3 days. She had been dying for 3 days. The boy? She said suddenly, struggling to sit up. Kieran. Here. A small figure appeared at the edge of the bed. Kieran's face was streaked with dried tears, but his eyes shone with fierce hope. You're awake. You're really awake. I'm really awake. He threw himself at her before she could prepare, small arms wrapping around her neck. "You can't do that again," he said, muffled. "You can't leave. You promised." "I know." Saren held him close, breathing in the clean child smell of him. "I'm here now." "Forever?" The word hung in the air. Such a simple concept, such an impossible promise. But Saren found herself nodding anyway. Forever. Elder Oren rose with the careful movements of the very old. "The Valdris blood runs true in you," he said quietly. "I felt it when I touched your hand. I feel it now, even stronger. You are your parents' daughter in every way that matters." "You knew them?" "I knew them." Sorrow and pride mingled in his voice. "They were the best of us. When they died, something precious left this world." He reached out, brushed his fingers across her cheek. "But something precious remains. I don't know how to be a princess, a leader." "You don't have to know." Elder Oren smiled. "You only have to be willing to learn." The old man withdrew, leaving the three of them alone. Torvin watched Saren with an expression she couldn't quite read. Fear and hope, and something deeper. "I've had the council assembled," he said slowly. "Tomorrow I'm going to tell them everything. And then I'm going to step down." Saren stared at him. "What?" "The throne belongs to you. My family took it through murder and deception." "Stop." She caught his wrist. "You're not your father. You're not Vashara. You didn't choose any of this. I benefited from it every day of my life. And now you know, and you're trying to make it right." Her eyes met his steadily. "That's not something a monster does, Torvin." "Then what does it make me?" The question was raw, vulnerable, the question of a man only now beginning to ask who he wanted to be. "It makes you someone who could be good," Saren said softly. "If you choose to be." His eyes closed. When they opened again, they were bright with something she had never seen there before. Hope. "I don't deserve your forgiveness." "Maybe not." She smiled slightly. "But you have it anyway." Spring had come to the northern mountains. Serene stood on the balcony of what had once been the Valdris royal chambers. Restored now, opened for the first time in nearly 20 years, and watched the sunrise paint the peaks in shades of rose and gold. So much had changed. The trial had been swift. Vashara's crimes laid bare before the assembled court, her own records providing damning evidence. She had been sentenced to exile, stripped of rank, stripped of pack. Some had called for execution, but Seren had argued for mercy. "Mercy," she had said, "is not weakness. It is strength choosing restraint." The court had listened. They had followed her lead. She was learning what it meant to be a leader, learning slowly, imperfectly, with countless mistakes along the way. But she had help. Elder Oren had remained at the castle, teaching her the history her parents would have passed down. Brennick had become an unexpected ally, his warmth and practical wisdom smoothing over the rough edges of court politics. He had been the one to coordinate the trial logistics, to manage the council's fears, to bridge the gap between the old regime and whatever was being born now. Kieran had been formally adopted, not by Seren alone, but by the pack itself. His father's crimes officially forgiven, the boy made prince by choice rather than blood. He was thriving, growing, learning to laugh without looking over his shoulder. And Torvin. Footsteps behind her. Familiar. Steady. "You're up early." She turned to find him standing in the doorway, morning light catching the silver in his dark hair. He had changed too. The haunted look was fading from his eyes. The tension was slowly unwinding. He smiled now. Actually smiled. It still startled her every time. "Couldn't sleep," she admitted. "Kept thinking about the summit next week." He crossed to stand beside her at the railing, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. "The Eastern Pack will support you. So will the South. The alliance is strong. Thanks to you. Thanks to us. He turned to look at her, and the softness in his expression made her breath catch. I've been meaning to ask you something. Oh? The dual leadership arrangement. It's working. It is, she agreed carefully. I was wondering if you might consider... He stopped, started again. Seren raised an eyebrow. The fearsome Alpha King? Tongue-tied? This is different. Different how? He turned to face her fully, took her hands in his. His palms were warm, steady. Different because I'm not asking as a king. I'm asking as a man who has spent the last 3 months watching you transform everything you touch. Who has watched you show mercy to those who wronged you, strength to those who doubted you, and kindness to a broken boy who needed someone to believe in him. His gaze held hers, and in his eyes she saw everything he wasn't saying. Every moment of watching each other across crowded rooms, every brush of fingers, every almost. I'm asking as a man who loves you, he said quietly. Who has loved you since you stood in a prison cell and refused to bow? Who will love you until the moon itself burns out? Seren's heart pounded against her ribs. Torvin, you don't have to answer now. You don't have to answer ever. I just needed you to know. Stop talking. He blinked. Seren pulled one hand free and pressed her fingers against his lips. Stop talking, she repeated softly. And let me answer. She leaned up on her toes and replaced her fingers with her mouth. The kiss was soft at first, tentative. But then his arms came around her, pulling her close, and something that had been building for months finally broke free. When they finally separated, both breathing hard, Seren was laughing. I think, she managed, that the court will be pleased. Damn the court. But he was smiling. What about Kieran? As if summoned by his name, a small figure appeared in the doorway. Finally. Kieran rolled his eyes with exasperated patience. I thought you'd never do it. You knew? Torvin asked. Everyone knew. Kieran crossed to them, wedging himself between their bodies and wrapping an arm around each of their waists. The only people who didn't know were you two. Seren looked at Torvin over Kieran's head. The Alpha, the King, the man who had once terrified her and now made her want to laugh with pure joy. I suppose, she said, this means I'm stuck with both of you. Forever, Kieran said firmly. Torvin's arm tightened around them both. Forever, he agreed. The morning sun rose higher, flooding the balcony with light, and Seren, former kitchen servant, lost princess, reluctant queen, stood in its warmth with her found family and thought that perhaps, after 19 years of darkness, she had finally found her way home. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed this story. These stories only exist because of you. Because you listen, you comment, you share, and that means more to me than you know. I'm so grateful you're here.